Well, Splitting the Sky, as you know, was a warrior and a friend to many people who had the opportunity to join him on a leg of his journey. He will be fondly remembered and very sadly missed. We want to say, I think on behalf of everyone here, to She Keeps the Door, Sandra Bruder, daughter of the Nishichu, I'm afraid I'm going to do harm to this, Nisichawea Cree Nation, which is in Manitoba, and her beloved children, Che, Rainbow, Dylan, and Angela's children. I add my voice today to express my condolences to the family, to all of Dac's relations, and many comrades and friends. I met Dac a few times, but my memories are most vivid of the action that we took when George Bush came to Calgary, and so I wanted to speak a little bit about that, because I think that that really exemplified something about Dac, which is, you know, his lifelong fight as a Mohawk warrior, as a consistent fighter against colonialism and the old colonial relations, which today the First Nations on a very broad scale are fighting to put into the dustbin of history, and as a consistent anti-imperialist fighter. So when George Bush came, he took that stand along with many people to say that war criminals don't belong in Canada, and to really put on notice the fact that the Canadian government was in violation of international law and in violation of its responsibilities and duties. Because when someone like George Bush, whose war crimes are, you know, without question, right? I mean, we know on a very, very large scale the crimes that were committed, whether we're talking about the crimes in Iraq or many other places in the world. So Bush came here right on the anniversary of the 6th anniversary of the start of the Iraq War. And the responsibility of the Canadian government under those circumstances was either to bar him from coming into Canada, or once he got here, to arrest him and to begin the proceedings. So it's a consistent stand that Canadians have taken, and the First Nations people have taken, that war criminals don't belong in Canada, that the Canadian government is actually aiding and abetting this criminal. We're talking war crimes, crimes against the peace, and crimes against humanity. So these are the three categories, you can say, which were established at the time of Nuremberg. So you have the crimes against the peace, the crimes against humanity, and actual war crimes. So George Bush was guilty on all three of those fronts. So specifically the war crimes like torture and so on, but also the starting of hostilities and the carrying out of hostilities, the crimes against the peace and the crimes against humanity in the genocidal attacks that Bush waged. So that, I think, is one of our really strong memories of Dac, was the participating in that. And I know that many of you in Calgary, you know, were part of the fight after the events of the day, when the rest of us went home back to Edmonton and so on, to defend Dac after he was arrested for the stand that he took. So I think that's a really important part of everybody's memories of Dac. I just want to say a couple of things about some of the other fights that he was involved in, which were very important. And one of them, of course, was Gustafson Lake, which is, you know, that was one of the important fights in the reestablishment of the traditions of the people, and taking a stand that the unceded territory of the Aboriginal people, that the Aboriginal people have a right to their sacred places, to their traditional places, and so Gustafson Lake was a real fight on that, and it was a tremendous exposure. I had the opportunity to hear Dak speak on this, and it was if anyone, doesn't really believe that the RCMP does these things, then it was a very big eye opener to see exactly what went on in Gustafson Lake in terms of the attacks on the rights of the Aboriginal people, the attempt to create an incident there so that the Aboriginal people could be blamed for it, when in fact the threat of violence was coming from the police themselves. And so that's, I think one of the lifelong themes for someone like Dak, that from the age of a small child, they faced the racism of the state, because very often today they try to present that racism is a matter of amongst the people, but the question of where does this racism come from? DACA was very clear on this question, right? That it's the state which is organizing the racist attacks against the people, which is responsible for that, and that Canadians and First Nations are going to stand as one to build new relations on a nation-to-nation basis, on the basis of recognizing each other's rights. As a Mohawk, the Mohawk are known as one of the nations where the questions of democracy we're extremely highly developed and are still extremely highly developed. And of course this is one of the crimes of the Canadian state, to try and suppress all of the traditional forms of governance, which were truly democratic, because in the Mohawk law and so on, there is no such thing that the rulers are above the people and that they can act with impunity against the people. It's the right of the people to remove the leaders at any time if they misbehave. The women have a very special role in as defenders of the law, defenders of the land and the water and so on. So that's another consistent part of this, which is that fight to build the fighting unity of all the forces who are standing against those old arrangements and against colonialism and imperialism, and for a bright future. So we can be very sad that Dak's gone, but happy that we walked a piece of that journey together with him, that we got to know him, and that together we got to know him in the most significant way that people interact with each other, which is in fighting for justice and for a new society, for rights, and for a life fit for human beings, for everyone. And so we were part of that together with Dak, and I think that's why it's very nice. And I'd really like to thank Nikki and everyone else who organized this and gave us a chance just to come together and reflect.
Thanks. I'm happy that if others talk too, that will be great.